Every piece of inventory that enters the business should be tracked throughout its life cycle until it exits the business. This is done by creating the right data setup from the start and applying the right tracking mechanism along the way. When an item first arrives at the business, it's given a specific SKU and a unique barcode. This barcode is what is going to allow me to track this piece going forward. Ignoring this step could give rise to a lot of errors in tracking inventory. And as we are going to see here, it prevents us from being able to generate and analyze very important reports that could show us the real picture of how inventory is being sold and moved. So this simple optimization step can help the business improve its reporting capability and thereby making better decisions when it comes to buying, pricing, and during markdowns and for inventory management purposes, which could improve its profitability on the bigger scale. So to start, the item first received an SKU number. Then it gets a unique barcode, and from there, additional information are attached to this SKU. For example, when the item first arrives in the business at the warehouse, this date is recorded and assigned to the SKU. We are going to see later how this is useful for tracking stock aging. And also the initial quantity received will be recorded. Then the item is categorized based on the merchandise hierarchy of the business. For example, it will belong to this department, to this category, this class, and this subclass. This is also important for sales analysis. I'm going to leave a link to an article on merchandise hierarchy best practices, so please check it out if you are setting up your business from scratch. Then the item receives an initial sale price, which is the full price, and also the cost price. We explained this in details in the pricing course. Knowing these two prices gives us the intake margin of this item. And then, every time this item gets sold at the store, the actual selling price is also recorded, because this could differ from the initial price. For example, if there was a promo at the store, or if the item was sold on staff discount, the actual selling price is going to be lower than the initial price, and this will be recorded and attached to this SKU. This helps us later on to find out the realized margin on this item by tracking how much quantity was sold at how much price and calculate the margin from them, which is going to be different from the intake margin. Then using both margins, we can calculate the discount rate. For more on discount rate calculation, please refer to our pricing course. Then the item is also assigned attributes. For example, size and color are attributes. These are different from the merchandise categorization. For example, an item could be a t-shirt belonging to the apparel category and the men's department. This is categorization. This same t-shirt will come in different sizes and colors. These are attributes. Attributes help us analyze and identify what is selling and what is not selling among the different attributes of the same product, and thereby optimize our future planning decisions. For example, when we analyze the data of the sizes sold last season, we will be able to optimize our size curve going forward and place our orders accordingly. I'm going to leave links to articles on size curve and size run if you want to get deeper on that. In some businesses, such as fashion businesses, the collection or season the item belongs to is also recorded on the system when it first arrives. This helps us while planning for markdowns and also for store display. Another information for this SKU is also the location. At any given time, we should be able to know how many pieces of this SKU is available at the warehouse and at each store location. This is done when the items are scanned initially from the warehouse and are sent to specific location. Then this location acknowledges the receipt of those items. So now those SKUs are being kept at the books of this store. Then every time an item is sold, the quantity that gets sold gets deducted from the initial amount received at the beginning. Same as when the item is scanned from one store to be transferred to another store or back to warehouse. And this is how inventory is tracked. and this is why it's important to apply barcodes and scanning at each step. So as you can see, when we set up the right system and use the right tracking mechanisms, we are able to collect a huge amount of data for each SKU that we carry. In the next lesson, we are going to see how we can sort through this data to generate useful reports that will help us analyze sales and inventory information and take actions based on this information. When you want to generate a report, you simply access your data management system and specify exactly which information you want to pull out to include in your report. Here we are going to explore the different kinds of sales and inventory reports and the data we need to include in each report. The stock on hand report gives me a snapshot of all the stock I currently carry in the business and exactly how many pieces I have for each item and where the location of these pieces are. It could also be extended to include how many pieces have been sold at each location. So to generate this report, you will select the SKU number, the existing quantity at the warehouse, and existing quantity at each location. And if you want to extend it, you can include quantity sold at each location. You can also include other information per SKU, such as category it belongs to and some attributes. I'm going to leave a link to a sample SOH report so that you can check it out. So how do you use this information? We said before the automatic replenishment systems do not always work accurately. So one of the checking mechanisms to ensure that everything is being replenished and stores are adequately stocked is to generate the SOH report. Now you will see for each SKU how much is available at the warehouse and how much is available at each store location. You can instantly find out if any of the stores is out of stock on certain items by filtering the report to show the items with zero quantity. So here, for example, I'm filtering for 0 at the store and also filtering for quantity at the warehouse to exclude 0 and negative from warehouse. If this item shows quantity at the warehouse but 0 quantity at the store, then either replenishment has been shut down for this particular item or store, or something wrong happened and replenishment has not been triggered. It could also be that this item was not ranged to that store in the first place. Remember when we said that not all stores receive all SKUs, or the item might have been received at the warehouse but still not launched in the stores. If the item was supposed to be in the store, in this case you can fix the issue or manually allocate the item to the store. What if the item was 0 at the store and also 0 at the warehouse, but it's still available at other stores? In this case, you need to make a decision on whether or not to initiate an IBT, an inter-branch transfer. For that, you will need to check the sales of the other stores and how many quantities they have sold from this item. If this item is selling normally at other stores, then you can leave it to them to sell it out. If one or more stores are very slow on moving this item, and it has been sold out at one of your flagship stores and is no more available at the warehouse, then you can make the decision to transfer this item from the slow stores to the flagship store. In the sell-through report, we will generate the quantity initially received of that particular item and the quantity that has been sold until this date. Then we apply the sell-through formula and calculate the sell-through rate for each item. This is going to be helpful for us to track performance of different categories, SKUs, and even vendors. But it's also an important report during markdown events and is used while managing markdowns. More on that in a coming lesson. In the stock aging report, you will extract the entire inventory, all the SKUs and their initial date of receiving, when they were first received at the warehouse. You will then include the item cost column. So I will have age column and COGS column. Then you are going to segregate those ages into brackets. For example, 0 to 3 months, and then 3 to 6 months, and then 6 to 9 months, and so on. Finally, in the last column, you will calculate the contribution of each age bracket to the total stock on hand at cost value. Contribution is calculated by dividing the cost amount of each age bracket by the total cost of all inventory and then multiply it by 100 to get the percentage. The sum of contribution should always add to 100%. So while looking at this report, I should be able to know how much of my inventory is fresh, that is, for example, below 3 months. Of course, fresh definition differs from one business to the other. This example is from a fashion business. Ideally, my inventory should be skewed towards the lower age brackets. This means I have newness in my business. For example, I could have 40% below 90 days or 3 months, and then 30% from 3 to 6 months, and then 20% from 6 to 9 months, and 5% from 9 to 12 months, and maybe 5 above 12 months. This is just an example. If my inventory is skewed towards higher age brackets, this means I have a newness or freshness problem in the business, and it also means that my inventory is losing value. Because as the stock ages, we cannot expect it to sell at full price anymore, because it has been at this price for so long and didn't sell. So the real value of this inventory is now lower. Some businesses even proactively apply provisions starting from certain age and actively mark down the value of this stock in their books. This information helps me while planning for markdowns, as we are going to see later, and also to set the norms for stock obsolescence. For example, the business could have a rule that any stock above 1.5 years is considered to be obsolete and should be written off the books. From this report, I can know the value to be written off. From this report also, we can calculate our forward stock cover, because here we have the total COGS of the entire inventory that we carry, and if we know the average COGS of the next 6 months, then we can calculate forward stock cover and compare it to our KPI, and based on that make decisions on whether we need to initiate a clearance event. Forward stock cover is how we measure if the current inventory stock holding is appropriate or too low or too high. We don't measure this in terms of inventory value, but rather in terms of time, how long this inventory is going to cover me. This is sometimes expressed in terms of months. If you use the open to buy sheet we provide, it will automatically calculate that for you once you fill it with the forecasted future sales. However, I know that in many regions it's measured in weeks. How many weeks of supply? For that, you just need to multiply the forward stock cover expressed in months by 4. If, for example, I have a 6 months cover of inventory, then this means I will turn my inventory twice per year, which is very low for most businesses. My target for inventory turns could be 4 times. This means I need to bring my inventory level down to 3 months cover only. Or if my target is 3 turns, then I need to bring it down to 4 months cover from the 6 months cover. Knowing that, I will be able to know how much inventory I need to clear right now. For more on forward cover calculation, please refer to the Retail Math course. Now we will see how we can generate sales reports from the data that we have. The Sales by Category report, sometimes also called the Sales Mix report or Category Contribution report. It can be generated by extracting all SKUs and their respective categories and the sales they have produced during a specific period of time. Let's say year to date. So we will extract those columns from the beginning of the year to this date. Then we will have a column for the category and the sales value it has produced. If we want to know the margin of this category, then we can add a column for the cost value of the items from this category, and based on that we can calculate the margin. So now we will have a row for each category with columns of sales value and cost value. We can apply the formula to calculate the margin of each category. And then in the last column, we can calculate the contribution of each category to the total business based on sales volume and the total sales volume. At the end of the sheet down, we will have the total sales of each business and total COGS, and from that, the total margin of the business. This report is important while analyzing sales data to know what each category is contributing to my business. This is useful while making buying decisions, and also the open-to-buy process uses this information while assigning buying budget for each category. It's also useful while pricing, as we have seen in the pricing course, so that we know what the margin for each category is and how it contributed to the total margin of the business. Then we price based on that. Another way this report is used is for visual merchandising, by making sure the display on the floor is in line with what each category contributes to the business. We can also use this report to calculate certain inventory metrics that will show the productivity of each category. If we add to it the beginning and ending inventory for each category, we can calculate the average inventory we hold for each category. This can also be extracted from the open-to-buy sheet, as the sheet shows me the ending inventory by category for each month. Then we can use the average from there. Combining that with the category sales and margins, we can then calculate GM ROI and inventory turnover for each category. This is very useful because it will show me the real return of each category for the business. For example, we might think that the category with the highest margin is the most profitable. But when we calculate those metrics, we find out that another category with lower margin actually has better returns. This is because the category with the higher margin also had much higher inventory levels throughout the year. In other words, I was spending too much on this category and had a lot of cash tied to its inventory, while the other category I spent less on, because this category tends to sell faster and turns its inventory more times in a year. Having such insight might be very useful while making planning decisions, as I might choose to allocate more money to the category with the higher returns, or I might go out and search for similar products or categories to introduce to the business that will give me similar returns and start taking away investments from the low-returning categories or vendors and use this money in a more efficient way. Of course, there are trade-offs to be made here, since we are going to take away from existing categories, so deeper research is required to make sure such a move will be beneficial for the business and its customers. The same report of category contribution could also be extended to include brands, subcategories, or classes, based on the level of reporting that I need. It could also be extended to include the quantity sold or the stock on hand, and so on. Other sales reports that can be generated and analyzed are the best sellers and zero sellers reports. To do that, we generate the sales value and sold quantity for each SKU for a certain period of time. This could either be for the total business or could be categorized by store. So map your report accordingly. Then when we have those columns, we can sort the column to show the highest sales in terms of value or in terms of quantity sold. These items will be the best sellers. For example, top 10 SKUs or top 10 in each category. For zero sellers, we can filter the quantity column to include only zero value. These reports are then shared with the store teams and the visual merchandising team to use such information for display on the floor. For example, they might find that the zero sellers are not displayed on the floor at all, or their display is hidden, so they can test other displays for it. The best-selling items could also be highlighted in certain areas, and so on. These have been the main reports and main metrics to be generated and calculated. However, as we have said, we have a huge amount of data connected to our sales and inventory, and these data could be sorted in many different ways using Excel functionalities to generate useful reports that give us more information. Using a pivot table, for example, you can choose which headings to include in your report out of the raw data on the system. You can pick and choose those columns based on the business need that you want to fulfill or based on the request you received from the management for certain information. In the next lesson, we are going to learn about managing markdowns and margins.